My name is Claire, and I never thought the worst day of my life would be the night I came home to find my key didn't work and my own daughter choosing to lock me out. For 4 years, I lived with the silence of her absence while my ex-husband painted me as the villain in a story only he controlled. But at her college graduation, when she walked across that stage and our eyes met for the first time in years, something shifted. What happened next in front of hundreds of witnesses would expose years of lies and change everything we thought we knew about love, loyalty, and the price of truth. If you want to know how a single moment can unravel years of carefully constructed deception, stay with me, because this story is about more than just a mother and daughter finding their way back to each other. The silence woke me before the alarm could. It wasn't the comfortable quiet of a sleeping house or the peaceful hush of early morning. This was different, deliberate, careful, the kind of silence that wraps around secrets. I lay in bed for a moment, staring at the ceiling fan's slow rotation, listening to the muffled sounds drifting up from downstairs. Voices. Whispers, actually. My husband's low rumble and my daughter's higher pitch, speaking in tones meant not to carry. I pushed back the covers and padded down the hallway, my bare feet making no sound on the hardwood. The whispering stopped the moment I reached the kitchen doorway. "Morning," I said, forcing brightness into my voice. David looked up from his coffee, his expression carefully neutral. "Morning." Beside him at the kitchen island, our 15-year-old daughter Emma hunched over her phone, suddenly fascinated by whatever was on the screen. "What were you two talking about?" I asked, moving toward the coffee maker. "Nothing important," David said smoothly. "Just discussing Emma's history project." Emma nodded without looking up. "Yeah, just school stuff." But it was Saturday. And Emma never discussed school projects on weekends if she could help it. I poured my coffee in silence, feeling the weight of things unsaid pressing against my shoulders. This had been happening more frequently lately, these little moments where I felt like an outsider in my own home, walking into conversations that evaporated at my presence, catching glances between David and Emma that held meanings I couldn't decipher. "I thought maybe we could go to the farmer's market today," I offered, sitting down across from them. "Get some fresh vegetables, maybe those flowers you like, Em?" Emma finally glanced up, but her eyes slid to her father first, as if seeking permission. David shrugged. "Emma has plans with friends this afternoon."
Oh.
I wrapped my hands around the warm mug. "You didn't mention that." "I'm mentioning it now," Emma said, a slight edge to her voice that was new, borrowed from somewhere. From someone. The rest of breakfast passed in stilted small talk and long pauses. I watched them, my husband of 17 years and the daughter I'd carried, birthed, nursed, and raised, and felt like I was looking at strangers through glass. 2 weeks later, at dinner, David launched into a story about our vacation to the coast 3 years ago. The kind of story we'd told a dozen times, shaped smooth by repetition. Except this version was different. "So Claire's standing there, absolutely convinced the hotel lost our reservation," David said, gesturing with his fork. He was smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. "She's practically in tears, making this huge scene at the front desk, when I finally look at the confirmation email and realize she'd booked us for the wrong weekend." Emma laughed, a nervous, uncertain sound. "Seriously? That's not how it happened," I said quietly. "The hotel had double-booked the room. You remember, David. The manager apologized and upgraded us." David shook his head, still wearing that false smile. "You're remembering it wrong, honey. You were pretty emotional that day." "Understandable. You'd been stressed about work." "I wasn't." I stopped myself, looking at Emma, waiting for her to remember, to confirm the truth. She'd been there. She'd seen the whole thing. But Emma just pushed her peas around her plate, saying nothing. "Anyway," David continued, "that's my wife, heart on her sleeve, emotions running high. It's part of her charm." He reached over and patted my hand in a way that felt more patronizing than affectionate. I pulled my hand back and stood up. "I need some air." Outside on the back porch, I pressed my palms against the railing and tried to steady my breathing. The story bothered me less than Emma's silence, her failure to defend the truth. Or maybe she genuinely didn't remember. Maybe I was the one misremembering. But I wasn't. I knew I wasn't. Through the window, I could see David and Emma still at the table, their heads bent together, talking. About me, probably. About how overly emotional I was. How I couldn't even remember a simple vacation story correctly. The glass between us felt thicker than ever. The afternoon I found my key didn't work, it had been raining, one of those cold, persistent drizzles that seeped into your bones. I'd stayed late at work, trying to finish a project that had been hanging over my head for weeks. Traffic had been a nightmare. By the time I pulled into our driveway, it was after 8 o'clock, and I was exhausted. I juggled my purse, laptop bag, and a bag of groceries I'd picked up on the way home, fumbling for my keys. The porch light wasn't on, even though I'd reminded David that morning that the bulb needed replacing. I found the right key by feel, slid it into the lock, and turned. Nothing. I tried again, jiggling it, thinking maybe the lock was stiff from the cold. Still nothing. A flutter of panic started in my chest. I knocked, then rang the doorbell. David opened the door, but he didn't step aside to let me in. He stood in the doorway, filling it, backlit by the warm glow of our living room. David? My key's not working. I know, he said, his voice flat and cold in a way I'd never heard before. I had the locks changed this afternoon. The grocery bag slipped from my grip, apples rolling across the wet porch. You what? Why? It's better if you stay elsewhere for now, Claire. The words didn't make sense. I stared at him, rain dripping from my hair into my eyes. What are you talking about? This is my house. Let me in. No. Just that. Simple. Final. David, please. I tried to move past him, but he shifted, blocking me. Over his shoulder, I could see Emma standing at the top of the stairs, watching. Emma, I called out. Emma, honey, tell your father. But David moved to close the door. I caught it with my hand, desperation making me strong. You can't do this. You can't just lock me out of my own home. Watch me. He pushed harder against the door. Emma, my voice broke. Emma, please. I saw her take one step down, hesitate. Her face was pale, conflicted. For a moment, I thought she would come to me. She had to come to me. I was her mother. She took another step, then stopped. I'll always stand by Dad, she said, her voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it over the rain. Then David shut the door in my face. I stood on that porch for 5 minutes, maybe longer, pounding on the door, ringing the bell, calling their names. The lights in the living room went off. Then the kitchen. Room by room, the house went dark, leaving me alone in the rain. Eventually, Mrs. Peterson from next door opened her front door and peered out. Everything all right over there, Claire? The concern in her voice, mixed with unmistakable curiosity, snapped me back to reality. I was making a scene. The neighbors were watching. I could see curtains twitching in windows up and down the street. Fine. I managed. Just fine. I walked around to the side of the house, hoping maybe the garage code still worked, but of course it had been changed too. That's when I noticed them. 2 large black trash bags sitting by the garage door, getting soaked in the rain. My hands shook as I tore one open. Clothes. My clothes. Toiletries. A few framed photos. The novel I'd been reading. Random items from my life, stuffed unceremoniously into garbage bags like I was trash to be put out on the curb. I hauled both bags to my car, feeling the weight of watching eyes on my back. Mrs. Peterson was still standing in her doorway. Across the street, Mr. and Mrs. Chun had come out onto their porch. Everyone was watching the show, watching me be thrown out of my own home with my belongings in trash bags. I threw the bags into my back seat, climbed into my car, and drove. I didn't know where I was going. I just drove, tears blurring the streetlights into streaks of gold and red. The motel was off Highway 17, the kind of place where you paid cash and nobody asked questions. The room smelled like cigarettes and industrial cleaner, and the bedspread had suspicious stains I tried not to think about. But it was cheap and it was shelter, and right now that was all I could manage. I caught sight of myself in the mirror above the dresser, really looked at myself for the first time in hours. My hair hung in wet tangles around my face. My mascara had run in dark streaks down my cheeks. My shirt was soaked through, clinging to my skin. I looked exactly like David had always accused me of being: unstable, emotional, falling apart. But as I stare at my reflection, something shifted. Beneath the exhaustion and humiliation, I saw something else. Anger. Determination. A refusal to be erased. I would not beg. I would not break. Not completely. I peeled off my wet clothes and stood under the weak shower spray until the water ran cold. Then I wrapped myself in the thin motel towel and sat on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. I should call someone. My sister. My friend Jennifer. But what would I say? My husband locked me out, and my daughter chose him? Even thinking it made me feel pathetic. Instead, I opened my banking app. Our joint account showed normal activity. No unusual withdrawals, no signs that David had cleaned it out. That was something. I had my own checking account from work, not much in it, but enough to survive on for a little while. I pulled out the soggy contents of the trash bags and spread them on the other bed, taking inventory. 3 days' worth of clothes. My work laptop, thank God. Some toiletries, though he'd clearly just grabbed random items. My good perfume but not my deodorant. My expensive face cream but not my contact lens solution. Among the items, I found a framed photo from Emma's 10th birthday. In it, Emma and I were laughing, faces pressed together, matching smiles. I'd taken it myself, holding the camera at arm's length. We'd made cupcakes that day, gotten frosting in our hair. David had been out of town for work. I held the frame against my chest and finally let myself cry, deep, wrenching sobs that felt like they might tear me apart. Jennifer showed up 2 days later, after I'd finally worked up the courage to call her. She took one look at the motel room and immediately started making plans to get me out of there, but I stopped her. "Just sit with me for a minute," I said. "Please." We sat on the edge of the bed, and Jennifer held my hand while I told her everything. When I finished, she was quiet for a long moment. "Claire, I need to tell you something," she said finally. "People are talking." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "David's been saying things. At the coffee shop, at the grocery store. Telling people you've been unstable. That he's worried about you. That he had to take steps to protect Emma." The room tilted. "Unstable? I'm not. I haven't been." "I know." Jennifer squeezed my hand. "I know you're not. But he's been building this narrative for weeks, maybe months. Sarah heard him talking to Pastor Mike after church, saying you'd been having episodes. Kelly saw him having lunch with Emma's school counselor. Each revelation felt like a physical blow. He's been planning this. It looks that way." "But Emma," I whispered. "Emma knows the truth. She knows I'm not unstable." Jennifer's face was full of sympathy. "She's 15, Claire. And he's her father. And if he's been telling her, every day, that you're not well, that your emotions are out of control, that he's the only one looking out for her." She didn't need to finish the sentence. A teenage girl, caught between parents, would believe the one who was there. The one who stayed. I met with a lawyer on Friday. Her name was Patricia Randall, and she had kind eyes but a firm handshake. Her office smelled like coffee and old books, and I felt a tiny bit safer there than I had anywhere since that rainy night on my porch. "Tell me everything," Patricia said, pulling out a yellow legal pad. So I did. The increasing isolation. The changed locks. The trash bags. Emma's choice. Patricia's pen moved steadily across the page. When I finished, she looked up. "Mrs. Morrison, I need to be honest with you. Your husband filed for legal separation 3 days ago. He's also filed for full custody of Emma." The words hit me like ice water. "He can't do that. I'm her mother. I haven't done anything wrong. According to his filing, you've been exhibiting erratic behavior. He's documented incidents going back 6 months. He has statements from neighbors about alleged disturbances. He's painted a picture of a woman in crisis." "That's not true." "None of that is true." "I believe you," Patricia said calmly. "But we're going to need to prove it. Do you have any documentation? Text messages? Emails? Anything that shows you were a present, capable parent?" I thought about my phone, my email. Most of my communication with Emma had been in person. Most of my interactions with David had been face-to-face. I never thought I'd need evidence that I was a good mother. I have work records, I said slowly. Performance reviews. My boss can vouch that I've been stable, reliable. That's a start. Patricia made another note. What about friends? Family? Anyone who can testify to your character? Jennifer. My sister, though she lives out of state. I try to think. Colleagues. Emma's teachers. I've been to every parent-teacher conference, every school event. Good. We'll gather all of that. Patricia set down her pen and looked at me directly. Claire, I'm going to be straight with you. This is going to be hard. Your husband has had time to prepare. He's built a narrative. And the fact that Emma is 15 and expressing a preference to stay with him will carry weight with the court. But it's not her real preference, I protested. He's manipulated her. He's turned her against me. Proving parental alienation is extremely difficult, especially when the child is a teenager capable of expressing what appears to be her own opinion. Patricia's voice was gentle but firm. We're going to fight this. But I need you to be prepared for the possibility that the court may grant him temporary custody while the case proceeds. I couldn't breathe. I could lose her. We're going to do everything we can to prevent that. But she didn't say no. That night, alone in my motel room, I called Emma. The phone rang 4 times before going to voicemail. Hi, honey, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I know things are confusing right now. I know Dad's probably told you things about me, and maybe some of them sounded true. But Emma, I need you to know I love you. I have always loved you. You will always be my heart, no matter what you've been told. No matter how long it takes, I'll wait for you to see the truth. I'm not going anywhere. I'm your mom. That doesn't change. I ended the call and stared at the phone, willing it to ring, willing her to call back. It didn't ring. 2 weeks later, I loaded my few possessions into my car one last time. Patricia had recommended I leave town. The gossip, the legal battle, the constant reminder of what I'd lost was taking its toll. I'd found a small apartment in a town 2 hours away, near the state university. It was far enough to feel like a fresh start, but close enough that I could return quickly if Emma needed me. If Emma ever needed me again. It was 3 in the morning when I drove past my old house, my home, one last time. A light was on in Emma's bedroom window. I slowed the car, staring up at that golden square of light, wondering what she was doing. Homework? Reading? Thinking about me at all? I wanted to stop, to pull into the driveway, to throw rocks at her window like in some romantic movie, to make her listen to me. But I didn't. Because Patricia was right, I needed to be smart about this. I needed to show the court that I was stable, rational, capable. Desperate midnight vigils outside my old house wouldn't help my case. So I drove on, watching in my rearview mirror as the house lights faded into the distance. Tears blurred my vision, making the streetlights swim and waver like stars reflected in water. By the time I reached the highway, I couldn't see the house anymore. Couldn't see my old neighborhood, my old life. It was all behind me now, disappearing into the dark. Ahead, the road stretched empty and black, and I had no idea where it would lead. The apartment was on the 3rd floor of a converted Victorian house, with sloped ceilings and windows that didn't quite close all the way. But it was mine. The lease was in my name only. The locks had never belonged to anyone else. I stood in the middle of the empty living room on my first morning there, holding a cup of gas station coffee, and tried to figure out how to build a life from scratch. The job came first. I'd applied to dozens of positions, but most required references, and I was terrified of what David might say if anyone called our old house. Finally, I found an opening for a clerical position at Riverside Community College, basic administrative work in the registrar's office. The pay was modest, but it came with benefits and the possibility of tuition remission if I wanted to take classes. When can you start? Asked Margaret Chin, the director of registration, after our brief interview. Tomorrow, I said. She smiled. I like your enthusiasm. Monday is fine. Every morning, I checked my phone. No messages from Emma. Every afternoon, I checked again. Nothing. Every evening, I'd sit on my second-hand couch and stare at my phone, willing it to ring. It never did. I tried calling a few more times in those first weeks, always straight to voicemail. I left short messages. Just wanted to hear your voice. Hope school is going well. I love you. Never anything that could be construed as pressure or manipulation. Nothing that David could use against me in court. The silence was worse than anger would have been. Anger would have meant she felt something. Silence just meant I was disappearing from her life, fading like a photograph left too long in the sun. Margaret Chin became my lifeline without either of us quite planning it that way. She was in her 60s, with silver hair she wore in a neat bun and reading glasses on a beaded chain around her neck. She'd worked at the college for 30 years and seemed to know everyone and everything. "You eat lunch alone every day," she observed one afternoon, appearing at my desk with 2 sandwiches. "That stops today." We ate in the break room, and I gave her the abbreviated version of my story. The divorce, the daughter who wouldn't speak to me, the fresh start. Margaret listened, asked no prying questions, and then said simply, "My son didn't speak to me for 8 years. His father convinced him I was the reason for the divorce. I missed his wedding, the birth of my first grandchild." "What happened?" I asked. "Time happened. Truth happened. His father got remarried, and the new wife saw through his bullshit pretty quickly. She encouraged my son to hear my side." Margaret smiled. "We're good now. Better than good. But those 8 years, I won't lie to you, Claire. They nearly broke me." "How did you survive them?" She considered this. "I lived well. Not to spite anyone, but because I refused to let someone else's narrative define my worth. I went back to school. I traveled. I made new friends. And when my son finally came looking for me, I was someone he could be proud of, not a bitter woman waiting by the phone." That night, I pulled up the community college course catalog online. I'd started college 20 years ago, but never finished. I'd gotten pregnant with Emma, married David, and somehow life had gotten in the way of my degree. I'd always told myself I'd go back someday. Maybe someday was now. I enrolled in 2 classes, Introduction to Psychology and Composition 101. Night classes after work, twice a week. When I walked into that first psychology lecture, I felt 17 again, nervous, excited, terrified I wouldn't be smart enough. But I was. I'd forgotten how much I loved learning, the particular pleasure of understanding something new. I'd forgotten I had a mind of my own, separate from being David's wife or Emma's mother. The composition professor, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, returned my first essay with a note in red ink at the top. "Exceptional insight and clarity. Please see me during office hours." I went, expecting to be told I'd somehow plagiarized or broken some rule I didn't know about. Instead, Dr. Rodriguez smiled and said, "You're a strong writer, Claire. Have you considered pursuing this more seriously?" "I'm just taking classes for myself," I stammered. "I'm not even working toward a degree, really, just." "Why not?" she interrupted. "Why not work toward a degree? You're clearly capable." "Why not?" "Because I was too old. Because I had too much else going on. Because I'd already failed once to finish. But when I opened my mouth, what came out was, I guess I could." Dr. Rodriguez pulled out a degree planning worksheet. "Let's figure out what you'd need." The custody hearing was on a gray Tuesday in November. I sat across the courtroom from David, with Patricia beside me and a growing sense of dread in my stomach. David's lawyer painted me as unstable, unreliable, potentially dangerous. He presented the evidence, neighbor testimony about that night on the porch when I'd caused a disturbance, gaps in my employment history from years ago when I'd stayed home with Emma, claims that I'd been withdrawn and erratic in the months before the separation. "And the child herself has expressed a clear preference to remain with her father," his lawyer concluded. "She feels safe with him. She does not feel safe with her mother." I wanted to stand up and scream that it was all lies, that David had manipulated everything, everyone. But Patricia had warned me to stay quiet, to let her handle it. When it was our turn, Patricia presented my employment records, character references from colleagues, proof that I'd been seeing a therapist, not because I was unstable, but because I was dealing with a difficult situation in a healthy way. But when the judge asked if Emma would be testifying, Patricia shook her head. The child has declined to speak to her mother or appear on her behalf. The judge looked at me over his glasses. Mrs. Morrison, is there anything you'd like to say? I stood, my legs shaking. I love my daughter. I have never harmed her or put her at risk. I'm doing everything I can to build a stable life so that when she's ready, when she sees the truth, I'll be here. I'll always be here. The judge nodded slowly. I appreciate that, Mrs. Morrison. However, given the child's age and expressed preference, I'm granting temporary primary custody to Mr. Morrison, with supervised visitation rights for Mrs. Morrison should the child agree to such visitation. The gavel fell like a hammer on my heart. I held myself together until I got to my car. Then I sat in the parking lot and sobbed, ugly, gasping sobs that felt like they might turn me inside out. Patricia knocked on my window. When I unlocked the door, she slid into the passenger seat. "This isn't over," she said. "She doesn't want to see me." The judge said supervised visitation should the child agree. Emma won't agree. She won't even answer my calls. "Not now," Patricia said. "But kids grow up. They figure things out. And when she does, you want to be someone she can be proud of. Someone who didn't give up on herself even when things got hard." I wiped my eyes. "You sound like my friend Margaret." "Margaretchen?" "From the college." Patricia smiled. "She's good people. Listen to her." The cafe incident happened on a Saturday in January. I'd ventured back to my old town to pick up some papers from Patricia's office. Afterward, I stopped at the Daily Grind for coffee, a mistake because of course it was filled with people from my old neighborhood. I ordered my latte and sat in the corner with a book, trying to be invisible. But voices carried, and I heard my name before I saw who was speaking. That woman whose family left her. I heard she had a breakdown. Poor thing. Though you do have to wonder what she did to make them all turn on her like that. My hands shook so badly, I almost dropped my cup. They were talking about me like I was a tragedy, a cautionary tale, a woman who'd done something terrible enough that even her own daughter didn't want her. I wanted to run. I wanted to stand up and scream the truth at them. Instead, I set down my cup very carefully, stood up with as much dignity as I could muster, and walked out. I made it to my car before the shaking became so bad I had to sit down. But I didn't cry. I'd cried enough. Instead, I drove back to my apartment, changed into workout clothes, and went for a run. Then I took a shower, made myself dinner, and studied for my psychology midterm. Margaret was right. I would live well. Not for spite, but because I refused to become the broken woman they thought I was. "Claire, do you have a minute?" Dr. Rodriguez caught me after composition class in February. I'd just turned in an essay about resilience, carefully avoiding any specifics of my own situation, but drawing on everything I'd learned in the past months. "I've been impressed with your work this semester," she said. "And I happen to know that the English department is looking for a teaching assistant for next fall. It's a small stipend, but it would give you valuable experience if you're thinking of continuing your education." "A teaching assistant?" I repeated. "But I'm not even a full student yet. I've only taken 2 classes." "You've earned an A in both. You're thoughtful, articulate, and reliable. I'd be happy to recommend you if you're interested." I thought about it for maybe 3 seconds. "Yes. Yes, I'm interested." She smiled. "Good. I'll send you the application information." Walking to my car that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. Not hope that Emma would call, or that David would be exposed, or that the court would change its mind. Just hope that I could build something worth having, a life that meant something, with or without the people I'd lost. I saved every penny I could, packed lunches every day, skipped new clothes, walked instead of driving whenever possible. By April, I had enough for a security deposit on a new apartment. Nothing fancy, but it had 2 bedrooms and better light, and it didn't smell like the desperation of the first months. The day I moved in, Margaret helped me carry boxes up the stairs. When we finished, she stood in the living room and nodded approvingly. "You're doing well," she said.
"I'm surviving," he corrected.
"That's not nothing." In the second bedroom, the one I couldn't help thinking of as Emma's room, even though she'd never seen it, I set up a small desk and bookshelf. I put my textbooks there, my laptop, my class notes. If I couldn't give Emma a room yet, at least I could build myself into someone worthy of her forgiveness. If forgiveness ever came. The letter arrived in May, forwarded from my old address. I recognized Emma's handwriting on the envelope immediately. I'd helped her practice cursive when she was 8, and she still had that distinctive loop on her LS. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside was just a single sheet of notebook paper with 3 words in her careful handwriting. Please stop trying. The letter was dated 3 weeks earlier. Below her words, David had added in his handwriting, Emma asked me to make sure this reached you. Respect her wishes. I read it 5 times, looking for hidden meaning, for any sign that she didn't really mean it. But the words were clear. Stop trying.
Let go.
Give up. I put the letter in a shoebox in my closet, along with every birthday card I'd sent that had been returned, every unanswered voicemail transcript, every school photo I'd managed to obtain. Evidence that I'd tried. Evidence that I'd loved her. Then I sat down at my desk and wrote her a letter of my own, not to send, but to keep. The first of what would become many. Dear Emma, I wrote. Today you asked me to stop trying. I can't do that. I can stop calling where you won't answer. I can stop sending letters you won't read. But I can't stop loving you. I can't stop hoping. I can't stop becoming someone you might someday be proud of. So I'll write to you here, in letters you'll never see, and someday, maybe when you're ready, maybe when you understand, I'll give them all to you. Until then, I'm here. I'm always here. I put the letter in a box labeled Someday and slid it under my bed. Summer session started, and I took 3 more classes. When fall came, I started my teaching assistant position, working with Dr. Rodriguez to grade papers and help struggling students during office hours. You're a natural at this, Dr. Rodriguez told me after I'd helped a student finally understand the structure of a thesis statement. I used to help Emma with her homework, I said without thinking. Then I felt my throat close up. Dr. Rodriguez touched my arm gently. She's lucky to have had you. Have, I corrected softly. She has me, even if she doesn't know it. Time moved strange that year, simultaneously too slow and too fast. Days crawled by without word from Emma, but months vanished in a blur of work and classes and trying to build a life. I stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. I stopped jumping every time I heard a notification. I learned to live in the present instead of constantly reaching for a past I couldn't reclaim or a future I couldn't control. But every night, I wrote another letter to the box under my bed. Every single night, I proved I hadn't given up, even if she never knew it. 3 years passed like water through fingers, sometimes rushing, sometimes still, but always moving forward. I finished my bachelor's degree in the spring, walking across a stage to receive my diploma while my coworkers cheered from the audience. Margaret had tears in her eyes. Dr. Rodriguez hugged me afterward and said, I knew you could do it. The box under my bed now held over 1,000 letters, one for every day Emma had been gone from my life. I'd stopped expecting her to call, stopped flinching when I saw teenage girls who reminded me of her. I'd learned to live with the constant, dull ache of her absence the way you learn to live with an old injury. It never fully heals, but you adapt. My promotion to academic advisor came with a small office and a bump in salary. I moved again, this time to a modest house with a yard, still maintaining that second bedroom I couldn't quite bring myself to use for anything else. Just in case. Always just in case. You look good, Jennifer told me during one of her visits. Really good. Healthy. I feel better, I admitted. And it was true. The rawness had faded, replaced by something harder, more resilient. I'd built a life worth living, even if it wasn't the life I'd imagined. But Emma was never far from my thoughts. I tracked her from a distance through careful, socially acceptable means. Her high school's honor roll was posted online. I saw her name there every semester. I found her school's newspaper archives and read about her debate team victories, her volunteer work, her acceptance into the National Honor Society. I watched her grow up through pixels and public records, a ghost haunting the edges of her achievements. The call from Jennifer came on a Tuesday afternoon in October. I ran into Susan Kelly at the grocery store, Jennifer said without preamble. She works at Emma's school. My heart immediately started racing. Is Emma okay? She's fine. Jennifer paused. Claire, Susan says David's gotten strict. Really strict. Emma's not allowed to have friends over. He monitors her phone constantly. She's always with him. Every school event. Every activity. That doesn't sound like concern, I said slowly. That sounds like control. That's what Susan thought too. She said Emma's a model student, but she seems tense. Like she's always performing. After we hung up, I sat staring at my office wall. 3 years of radio silence, and now this, whispers that the perfect father-daughter picture David had painted might not be so perfect after all.
I wanted to do something.
Storm over there, demand to see her, pull her away from whatever unhealthy dynamic had developed. But I'd learned patience these past years. I'd learned that sometimes the best thing you can do is wait for the right moment instead of forcing the wrong one. Still, the worry settled into my chest and made a home there. Late one evening, unable to sleep, I did something I'd avoided for years. I typed Emma's name into Facebook's search bar. There she was. Her profile picture showed her at what looked like a debate competition, holding a trophy, smiling. But Jennifer was right. Something about the smile looked forced, performative. Her privacy settings were tight, but I could see a few public posts.
Photos from school events.
Always with David in the frame, his hand on her shoulder, both of them wearing matching smiles that didn't quite reach their eyes. I scrolled through the sparse public feed, hungry for any glimpse of who she'd become. In one photo from a beach vacation, Emma stood slightly apart from David, her arms crossed. In another, she was caught mid-laugh with friends, and for a moment she looked genuinely happy, until you noticed David in the background, watching. I closed the app before I could spiral further. But that night, I wrote a different kind of letter to the box. Emma, I see you even when you don't see me. I watch you achieve amazing things. I worry about the shadows in your smile. I hope you're okay. I hope you're happy. And I hope, someday, you'll let me back in to tell you this in person. The flyer appeared on the community board outside the library one morning in November. I almost walked right past it, just another announcement for a student event. But the name caught my eye. Riverside Community College Honors Society Induction Ceremony. And there, in the list of inductees, Emma Morrison, graduating with highest honors. My legs went weak. I grabbed the edge of the bulletin board for support. Emma was here. At my college. The same college where I worked. How had I not known? How long had she been here? I pulled out the flyer with shaking hands and ran back to my office. A quick search of the registrar's system confirmed it. Emma Morrison, enrolled as a dual-credit student her senior year of high school, taking advanced courses. She'd been on campus for 2 semesters. 2 semesters, and we'd never crossed paths. But we could have. We might have. She'd been walking the same hallways, studying in the same library, breathing the same air, and I'd had no idea. I started seeing her after that, now that I knew to look. A glimpse across the cafeteria. A figure disappearing around a corner that might have been her. Once, in the library, I was certain. She sat 3 tables away, headphones on, completely absorbed in her textbook. I watched her for 20 minutes, memorizing the way she pushed her hair behind her ear, the way she chewed her bottom lip when concentrating, the way she'd tap her pen against her notebook when thinking. All the little gestures I'd forgotten and now remembered with piercing clarity. She looked so much older than the 15-year-old who'd shut the door on me. Taller, her face having lost its childish roundness. She looked like a young woman now, poised and confident. She looked like a stranger. I left before she could notice me, my heart hammering against my ribs. Margaret found me crying in my office an hour later. "What happened?" she asked, closing the door behind her. "She's here," I managed.
Emma.
"She's been here all semester, and I didn't know." Margaret sat down heavily. "Oh, Claire. What do I do? Do I approach her? Do I leave her alone?
Don't eat.
What does your gut tell you?" I wiped my eyes. That she's not ready. That if I push now, I'll lose whatever chance I might have later. Then trust that instinct, Margaret said gently. You've waited this long. You can wait a little longer. But waiting had never been so hard. Knowing she was close enough to touch, but still impossibly far away. The rumors about David started filtering through in bits and pieces. A colleague mentioned an angry parent who'd gotten into a shouting match with the dean. When pressed for details, she said the man had been furious that his daughter wasn't given special consideration for a scholarship she hadn't qualified for. Acted like the college owed him something, my colleague said. Really entitled. Kept saying his daughter was top of her class and deserved better treatment. What was his name? I asked, though I already knew. Morrison, I think. David Morrison. Another week, another story. David berating a professor who'd given Emma an A- instead of an A. The professor, Dr. Yamamoto, filed a formal complaint about harassment. People were starting to notice. The perfect, devoted father image was cracking, revealing something uglier underneath. The note appeared under my office door on a Wednesday in March. Just a piece of notebook paper, folded once, with 6 words in handwriting I would have recognized anywhere. I know you're my mom. I just don't know how to face you. I read it 20 times, looking for hidden meanings, for clues about what she was feeling. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the paper. She knew I was here. She'd known where my office was, had walked here, had stood outside my door. Had she hesitated before sliding the note under? Had she almost knocked? I wanted to run through the hallways shouting her name. I wanted to plant myself outside her classroom and wait for her. I wanted to hold her and never let go. Instead, I put the note in my purse and carried it with me everywhere. Evidence that I wasn't forgotten. Evidence that somewhere inside her, she still knew who I was. That night, I wrote her a letter, a real one this time, one I planned to send. But when I finished, I looked at it and realized it was too much, too soon. She'd taken a small step toward me. If I rushed forward, I'd scare her away. So I added it to the box under my bed and waited. The official letter arrived in April, formal and impersonal. You are cordially invited to attend the Riverside Community College commencement ceremony. Emma Morrison will be graduating with highest honors as part of the dual enrollment program. The invitation was signed by the college president. Not by Emma, and certainly not by David. But it was an invitation nonetheless. I called Jennifer that night. She's graduating. Top of her class. And I don't know if I should go. Of course you should go, Jennifer said immediately. What if it makes things worse? What if David makes a scene? What if Emma doesn't want me there? Claire, you've been waiting for a chance. This is it. Maybe not the chance you hoped for, but it's something. You show up, you show her you're still here, and you let her decide what happens next. I paced my living room, the invitation clutched in my hand. I'm terrified. I know. Go anyway. I bought a new dress for the ceremony. Nothing flashy, just something neat and put together that would help me blend into the crowd. I didn't want to stand out. Didn't want to cause a scene. I just wanted to be there, to witness Emma's achievement, to be present for this milestone even if I couldn't be part of it. The night before graduation, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, playing out 1,000 scenarios. What if Emma saw me and was angry? What if David confronted me? What if security asked me to leave? What if Emma was glad I came? That possibility terrified me more than all the others combined. At 3 a.m, I got up and pulled out the box from under my bed. I read through some of the letters I'd written. Years of words she'd never seen. Years of love she might not believe existed. Tomorrow, I wrote in my final letter before graduation, I'll see you accomplish something amazing. Whether you know I'm there or not, I'll be proud. I've always been proud. I always will be. The auditorium was already half full when I arrived, 30 minutes before the ceremony was scheduled to begin. I'd planned it that way. Early enough to get a seat, late enough that I wouldn't have to make small talk with anyone. I chose a spot in the back row, far to the left side, partially obscured by a support column. From there I could see the stage clearly, but I was hidden enough that I might escape notice. I set my phone to silent, clutched my purse in my lap, and tried to remember how to breathe normally. Families filled the rows around me, excited and chattering. Parents adjusted cameras and saved seats. Younger siblings complained about being bored. It was the happy chaos of a celebration, and I sat in the middle of it feeling like a ghost. Then I saw him. David walked down the center aisle with the confidence of someone who owned a room. He was wearing an expensive suit and that smile he used to charm people, the one that had fooled me for so many years. He glad-handed faculty members, paused to chat with the dean, made sure everyone saw him being the proud, involved father. He took a seat in the third row, right in the middle. Prime viewing location. Of course. I pressed myself back into my chair, even though there was no way he could see me from where he sat. My heart was hammering so hard I was sure people around me could hear it. The lights dimmed. The ceremony began with speeches, the college president, a faculty member, a student representative. I barely heard any of it. My eyes kept scanning the rows of graduating students seated to the left of the stage, trying to find Emma's face. Then the president introduced David. We have a special treat today. David Morrison, father of our highest-achieving dual enrollment student, has asked to say a few words about the importance of parental support in education. I felt the blood drain from my face as David stood and walked to the podium. This wasn't part of the printed program. He'd arranged this somehow, pulled strings, made himself part of Emma's moment. Thank you, David began, his voice warm and confident. It's an honor to be here to celebrate not just my daughter, but all these remarkable students. As a single parent, I've had the privilege of guiding Emma through her academic journey. Single parent. The words were a knife between my ribs. It hasn't always been easy, he continued. There were challenges, sacrifices. Times when I had to be both mother and father, both cheerleader and disciplinarian. But watching Emma excel, seeing her grow into the exceptional young woman she is today, it makes every sacrifice worth it. The audience was nodding along, moved by his words. They didn't know. None of them knew. Education is a partnership between parent and child, David said. It requires dedication, presence, consistency. It requires showing up every single day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. His eyes swept across the auditorium as he spoke. Then they found me. For a moment, we locked eyes across the crowded room. His face went pale. His hand, resting on the podium, began to tremble. He fumbled his next words, stammering slightly before recovering. I'm proud to say that Emma has never lacked for support for guidance for, he paused, his composure cracking just slightly. For love. He finished his speech quickly after that, his confidence shaken. As he returned to his seat, he kept glancing back toward my corner of the auditorium, as if he couldn't quite believe I was really there. Good. Let him be unsettled. Let him wonder what I was going to do. The names began to be called. I watched student after student cross the stage, shake hands, accept their diplomas. Each one brought me closer to the moment I'd been both longing for and dreading. Emma Morrison, graduating with highest honors. She rose from her seat with the grace of someone who'd rehearsed this moment 100 times. She was wearing her cap and gown, her dark hair pulled back, her face composed. She looked beautiful and terrified and strong all at once. As she walked toward the stage, I leaned forward in my seat, desperate to see every detail. The way she climbed the stairs carefully in her heels. The way she shook the president's hand with a firm, confident grip. The way she turned to face the audience with her diploma, her smile bright and perfect and completely false. Then her eyes began to scan the crowd. I knew she was looking for David. He was waving from his third-row seat, beaming, taking photos. Playing the proud father, for all he was worth. But Emma's eyes kept moving. Searching. They swept across the middle rows. Then the back. Then, our eyes met. I saw the shock on her face, the way her practiced smile faltered for just a moment. I gave her a small nod, just a tiny tilt of my head, and mouthed the words, "I'm proud of you." Her eyes filled with tears. The ceremony continued, but I didn't hear any of it. I kept my eyes fixed on Emma as she returned to her seat. She was crying, trying to hide it, wiping her eyes beneath her cap. The students around her asked if she was okay. I saw her nod, but she kept glancing back toward where I was sitting. When the final speech ended and the graduates threw their caps in the air, I considered leaving, slipping out before anyone could stop me, before David could confront me, before I could complicate Emma's day any further. But I couldn't. My legs wouldn't move. After 4 years of waiting, of watching from a distance, of writing letters to a box under my bed, I couldn't leave without at least trying to speak to her. The graduates poured off the stage, flooding the aisles to find their families. I stood and moved closer to the pillar, making myself as invisible as possible while keeping Emma in sight. David was waiting at the end of the center aisle, arms spread wide, the picture of paternal pride. Emma descended the stage stairs slowly, her eyes searching the crowd. Not for David, I could tell by the way she was looking.
She was looking for me.
David called her name. Emma. Over here, sweetheart. She started walking toward him. Of course she did. 4 years of conditioning, for years of him being the only parent who was there. My heart sank. But then, about 10 feet away from him, she stopped. She turned her head and looked directly at me. For a moment, the entire auditorium seemed to hold its breath. Emma stood frozen between us, between the father who'd controlled her narrative for years and the mother who'd waited in silence. Emma, David said again, his voice edged with warning. Come here. She didn't move toward him. She walked toward me. Every step she took felt like it happened in slow motion. People were starting to notice, starting to stare. David's arms slowly lowered to his sides, his expression shifting from confusion to shock to anger. Emma, he called out, louder now. What are you doing? She ignored him. Her eyes were locked on mine, tears streaming down her face, her diploma clutched against her chest. When she reached me, she stopped. We stood there for a moment, just looking at each other. I could see all the years between us in her face, the girl she'd been and the woman she'd become. I could see the hurt, the confusion, the longing. Mom, she whispered. Just that one word, but it contained everything. Then she fell into my arms. I caught her, held her tight, felt her sob against my shoulder the way she used to when she was small and scared. My hand found the back of her head, and I pressed my face into her hair, breathing in the scent of her, feeling the solid reality of her after years of nothing but memory. I'm here, I whispered. I'm here. I never left. Around us, the crowd had gone silent. Phones were out, cameras were pointed at us, but I didn't care. Nothing mattered except the weight of my daughter in my arms. I'm sorry, Emma choked out. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Sure, I said, holding her tighter. It's okay. You're okay. We're okay. When I finally looked up, David was standing at the end of the aisle, frozen. His face was sheet white, his hands clenched at his sides. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but no words came out. Our eyes met across the distance. In his face, I saw the moment he realized he'd lost. Not just Emma's loyalty, but the narrative he'd built, the image he'd crafted, the control he'd wielded. Emma pulled back just enough to look at me, her hands gripping my arms as if afraid I might disappear. I finally see the truth, she said, her voice thick with tears. I'm sorry I didn't sooner. I cupped her face in my hands, this child I'd carried and lost and found again. You see it now. That's what matters. Behind her, David remained standing alone in the aisle, surrounded by celebrating families, looking smaller and more insignificant with every passing second. The proud single father, exposed as the architect of a 4-year lie. And in front of me, my daughter, my Emma, home at last. The auditorium doors led to a long corridor lined with bulletin boards and faculty photos. The applause from inside faded to muffled echoes as Emma and I stepped through, still holding onto each other like we might dissolve if we let go. Behind us, footsteps. Fast, angry footsteps. Emma. David's voice cut through the murmur of exiting families. We need to talk.
Now.
Emma's body tensed in my arms, but she didn't turn around. I felt her take a breath, gathering herself, and then she slowly pulled back from me and faced her father. He strode toward us, his face a mask of barely controlled fury. But he kept his voice low, hissing through a smile that didn't reach his eyes. You just made a scene in front of the entire college. In front of my colleagues. What were you thinking? Your colleagues? Emma's voice was steadier than I expected. This is my graduation, Dad. Not your networking event. A few people were lingering in the hallway now, pretending to check their phones while obviously listening. David noticed and dialed back his anger, replacing it with concern. The devoted father worried about his confused daughter. Sweetheart, I understand you're emotional right now. Graduation is overwhelming. But we should discuss this privately. No more speaking for me, Emma interrupted. She stepped slightly in front of me. Not much, just a few inches, but the gesture was unmistakable. She was choosing a side. Again. But this time, it was mine. David's eyes flickered to me with pure venom before returning to Emma. You don't understand what she... I understand that you've been lying to me for 4 years, Emma said quietly. Several phones came out, pointed in our direction. David noticed and his jaw tightened. Emma, your mother has a record of instability. I was protecting you. Everything I did was to keep you safe. A record you built, I said, my voice calm despite the rage simmering beneath. A record of strategically timed complaints, conveniently documented incidents, and testimony from people you manipulated. Emma blinked, her head swiveling toward me. What do you mean, a record he built? David's face went pale. Don't listen to her. She's trying to. Mr. Morrison? A familiar voice interrupted. Dr. Rodriguez appeared at David's elbow, smiling warmly. Congratulations on Emma's achievement. Quite a remarkable young woman you've raised. She turned to Emma, smoothly inserting herself between father and daughter. That essay you wrote for Professor Yamamoto's class was exceptional.
He's still talking about it.
The mention of Professor Yamamoto, the one David had harassed, made David stiffen. Dr. Rodriguez's smile never wavered, but her eyes held a knowing glint. She'd positioned herself deliberately, diffusing the confrontation without directly acknowledging it. Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez, Emma said, clearly grateful for the interruption. Will you be at the reception? Dr. Rodriguez asked. I believe the honor students have a special ceremony. Emma glanced between David and me, uncertainty crossing her face. Of course she'll be there, David said, his voice tight. We should get going, actually. The car's in the lot. He reached for Emma's arm, but she stepped back. I'm going to take a walk first. With my mom. Just for a little while. The word mom hit David like a physical blow. His hand dropped. Around us, I could see people watching, phones still out, capturing this moment of domestic drama for later gossip. Emma. 10 minutes, Dad. That's all. Emma's voice was firmer now. I'll meet you at the car. For a moment, I thought David would refuse. His hand clenched and unclenched at his side, his face cycling through anger, panic, and calculation. But too many people were watching. He couldn't make a scene without destroying the image he'd worked so hard to build. 10 minutes, he said through gritted teeth. Then he turned and walked away, his footsteps echoing down the corridor. We found a bench on the quad, beneath an old oak tree that provided shade from the afternoon sun. For a moment, neither of us spoke. We just sat there, absorbing the reality of being together again. I've been receiving screenshots, Emma said finally, staring at her hands. Anonymous ones. Old text messages between you and Dad. Court documents. Things that didn't match what he told me. My breath caught. What kind of things? Messages where he called you weak, pathetic. Texts to his lawyer about how to make you look unstable. A filing where he claimed you abandoned me, but the date was the same day your work records show you pulled an overnight shift. She looked up at me, her eyes red-rimmed. He said you left us. That you chose not to fight for custody. But the documents showed you did fight. You just lost. Who sent them to you? I don't know. They came to my campus mailbox, no return address. Just printouts and screenshots, over and over for months. At first I thought it was a cruel prank. But then I started really looking at them, comparing dates, checking facts. She wiped her eyes. Dad used to rehearse, you know. Rehearse.
His stories about you.
I heard him once, the night before a custody hearing. He was in his office, practicing what he'd say. Unstable, absent, unsafe. He kept repeating the words like he was memorizing lines. Her voice broke. I thought he was just preparing to tell the truth. But now I realize he was preparing to perform. I wanted to rage, to scream about the injustice of it all. But Emma was already carrying enough guilt. I reached for her hand instead. You picked the louder voice, I said gently. The one that was there, the one that seemed safest. That wasn't your fault, Emma. You were 15. You were doing your best to survive. I picked the wrong voice, she whispered. You picked the only voice you could hear at the time. But you're hearing differently now. That's what matters. We sat in silence for a moment, letting the weight of 4 years settle between us. Around us, families celebrated, took photos, laughed. We just held hands and breathed. Can we? Emma hesitated. Could we meet for breakfast tomorrow? Somewhere public, just to talk. Yes, I said immediately. Yes, absolutely. I need to go slow, she said, looking at me with an expression both hopeful and afraid. I need time to process everything, to figure out what's real and what I was told to believe. We'll go as slow as you need. I squeezed her hand. But Emma, I need you to understand something. We move forward truthfully from here. Not to hurt your father, but to stop any more harm.
Can you agree to that?
She nodded. No more lies. No more performances. In the distance, I could see David pacing beside his car, checking his watch, his agitation visible even from here. You should go, I said, though it physically hurt to let her go. Before he comes looking. Emma stood, but before she walked away, she turned back.
Mom?
Thank you for not giving up on me. Even when I gave up on you. I could never give up on you, I said. Not ever. I watched her walk across the quad toward the parking lot, toward the father who'd stolen 4 years from us. But this time, I knew she was coming back. This time, she knew the truth. The diner Emma chose was called Rosie's, a cheerful place with red vinyl booths and a breakfast menu that ran to 3 laminated pages. I arrived 15 minutes early and ordered coffee, watching the door with my heart in my throat. Emma walked in at exactly 8 o'clock, wearing jeans and a college sweatshirt, looking younger and more uncertain than she had in her graduation gown. When she slid into the booth across from me, I had to resist the urge to reach across and hold her hand. I didn't sleep, she admitted. I kept thinking about everything, and my brain won't turn off. I brought something, I said, pulling a folder from my bag. I wasn't sure if I should show you, but I think you need to see it. Inside were years of carefully organized documents, receipts from the nights I'd worked late, the nights David claimed I'd abandoned my family, copies of text messages I'd saved where I'd begged him to let me see Emma, pay stubs showing stable employment, therapist notes documenting my mental health. Emma paged through them slowly, her expression growing increasingly disturbed. Then she stopped on a particular page, a bank statement showing regular payments from David's business account to something called Hartwell Consulting, LLC. What's this? She asked. I don't know, I admitted. But the dates are interesting.
See?
Each payment coincides exactly with a court date or custody hearing. Emma pulled out her phone and started typing. Hartwell Consulting, let me search. Her eyes widened.
Mom.
Hartwell Consulting is registered to Thomas Hartwell, Dad's golf partner, who also happens to work at the same law firm as Dad's divorce attorney. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. David hadn't just manipulated the narrative, he'd paid to manufacture evidence, to coordinate testimony, to build a case against me. This is fraud, Emma breathed. This is actual legal fraud. Over the next hour, hunched over coffee and untouched plates of eggs, we built a timeline. Emma had a friend in the college's IT department, a classmate named Marcus who was good with public record searches. She texted him, asking for help. Can you look up corporate registries for Hartwell Consulting? She typed. And cross-reference with court records for a custody case from 4 years ago? Marcus's response came quickly. Give me an hour. While we waited, Emma told me about her life with David. The strict rules. The constant monitoring. The way he'd positioned himself in every aspect of her life until she couldn't make a decision without checking with him first. He'd say he was protecting me, she said, stirring her coffee absently. That the world was dangerous, and he was the only one I could trust. After a while, I believed it. I believed you were the danger. Emma? No, let me finish. I need to say this. She looked up at me, tears threatening. I heard you crying that night, when he locked you out. I heard you calling my name, and I stood at the top of the stairs and did nothing. That's haunted me for 4 years. Every night, I remember your voice. You were protecting yourself, I said firmly. You did what you had to do to survive. I never blamed you for that. Not once. Her phone buzzed. Marcus had sent a document, a complete corporate filing for Hartwell Consulting, showing payments not just from David but from a dozen other clients, many of them involved in contentious custody cases. We need to talk to Mrs. Chun, Emma said suddenly. Our old neighbor. She always liked you. She might remember things. Mrs. Chun invited us over that same afternoon. She was older than I remembered, her hair completely white now, but her eyes were still sharp. I wondered when you'd come, she said, ushering us into her living room. I've been holding on to something for 4 years waiting. She brought out an old smartphone, the screen cracked but still functional. The night David locked you out, Claire, I heard the commotion. I called the police, not on you, but because I was worried. I heard shouting before you got home. She tapped the phone and pulled up a voice memo, dated 4 years ago. I recorded this before the police arrived, just in case. She hit play. David's voice filled the room. Don't answer the door. She'll look desperate for the camera. Let her pound and yell. The neighbors need to see her losing it. This only works if she looks unstable. Emma's face drained of color. He planned it. He planned the whole thing. He called your mother over and over that day, Mrs. Chin said. I saw him from my window. He kept texting, then he'd watch the street. When her car pulled up, he turned off all the porch lights. He wanted her to struggle with the lock in the dark. The recording continued. In the background, younger Emma's voice. Dad, why are we doing this? David's response. Because sometimes you have to make hard choices to protect what matters. Your mother isn't well, sweetie. She needs help. This will help her get the help she needs. The lie, delivered so smoothly, so convincingly. He told me you were dangerous, Emma whispered. That locking you out was for your own good, that you'd thank him eventually. Mrs. Chun turned off the recording. I've kept this all these years. Part of me hoped you two would work it out, and I'd never need it. But seeing you here together, I think maybe you do need it after all. Back at my house, Emma and I spread documents across the dining room table. Bank statements, corporate filings, court records pulled from public archives. The old neighbor's recording transferred to my laptop. The timeline was damning. David had begun making payments to Hartwell Consulting 3 months before he locked me out. He'd been planning this long before that rainy night. The corporate registry showed Hartwell had worked on 17 custody cases, all involving fathers seeking full custody, all with eerily similar allegations against the mothers. He paid for this, Emma said, staring at the evidence. He paid to destroy you, to destroy us. Her phone buzzed, a text from David. Where are you? We need to talk about yesterday. Come home. Emma's hand shook as she typed a response. I'm staying with Mom for a week. I need space to think. His reply came immediately. Don't be ridiculous. Your room is here. I won't pay for a hotel. I have scholarships, Emma typed back. And a part-time job. I don't need your money. Then she blocked his number. That night, Emma slept on my couch. Not because I didn't have a second bedroom. I'd kept one ready for her for 4 years, but because she said she wanted to ease in slowly. Before she fell asleep, I brought out the box from under my bed. The one labeled someday. What's this? Emma asked. Letters, I said. I wrote you one every day. Every single day for 4 years. I couldn't send them, but I could not write them either. Emma opened the box with trembling hands and pulled out the first letter, dated the day after David locked me out. She read it silently, tears streaming down her face. Can I keep these?" she asked. "They're yours," I said. "They were always yours." She fell asleep reading them, the box beside her on the couch, papers scattered around her like fallen leaves. I covered her with a blanket and sat in the armchair across from her, watching her sleep the way I used to when she was small. In the morning, we'd figure out what to do with the evidence. We'd decide whether to take legal action, how to confront David, how to move forward. But tonight, my daughter was home. And that was enough. Emma woke me at dawn, sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open and papers spread around her. "Mom," she said when I shuffled in, "I found something else. Tax returns." She turned the laptop toward me. On the screen were David's tax filings from the past 4 years. He claimed head of household status, educational deductions for my tuition, dependent exemptions. "Mom, he's been getting tax credits worth thousands of dollars specifically because he had full custody of me." "It wasn't just about control," I said slowly. "No," Emma agreed. "It was about money. He made money off keeping me away from you." We sat in the quiet kitchen as the sun rose, staring at the evidence of a betrayal that ran deeper than either of us had imagined. David hadn't just manipulated us. He'd profited from our pain. "What do we do now?" Emma asked. I thought about Patricia, my lawyer from 4 years ago, about Dr. Rodriguez and her careful intervention, about Margaret and her advice to live well, to build something worth having. "Now," I said, "we do this right. We build a case that can't be ignored. We tell the truth, clearly and carefully. And we make sure this never happens to anyone else." Emma nodded.
No revenge.
"Just justice." "Just justice," I agreed. In the growing light of morning, surrounded by evidence of lies and manipulation, we began planning not for revenge, but for something harder: the truth. The letter arrived via certified mail 3 days after Emma moved into my spare bedroom. David Morrison requests private mediation to resolve outstanding family matters and financial disputes. Please contact our office to schedule. It was signed by a lawyer I didn't recognize, not the one who'd represented him in the original custody case. "He's scared," Patricia said when I called her. She'd agreed to represent me again, pro bono this time, after I'd shown her everything we'd found. "He knows you have something. He's trying to control the narrative before you can use it." "What do we do?" "We don't do private mediation," Patricia said firmly. "We do recorded, official mediation with a neutral party present. And we bring every piece of documentation you've gathered." Emma sat beside me on the couch, listening to my side of the conversation. When I hung up, she said, "I want to be there. When you confront him, I want to be there." "Emma, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. He used me as a weapon against you. I need to be there when we disarm him." The mediation took place in a conference room with glass walls, transparent, observed, official. David arrived with his new attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Ms. Palmer, who looked expensive. He'd dressed carefully in a business suit, projecting confidence and respectability. Then he saw Emma sitting beside me, and his confidence flickered. "Emma, sweetheart," he started, but she held up her hand. "I'm here as a witness," she said quietly. "Not as your daughter. Not today." Ms. Palmer cleared her throat. "Perhaps we should begin. Mr. Morrison has requested this mediation in hopes of reaching an amicable resolution without further legal action. He's prepared to discuss certain adjustments to the custody arrangement and potentially offer financial support to facilitate." "We're not here for adjustments," Patricia interrupted, placing a thick binder on the table. "We're here because Mr. Morrison engaged in systematic fraud, parental alienation, and financial manipulation over a 4-year period. And we have documentation." She opened the binder. Inside were tabs, color-coded and organized, bank statements showing payments to Hartwell Consulting, corporate registries proving the connection to David's attorney's firm, Mrs. Chen's recording transcript, timeline discrepancies between David's claims and actual events, tax returns showing fraudulent claims. David's face went pale. Ms. Palmer leaned forward, scanning the first few pages, her expression shifting from confident to concerned. "These are serious allegations," she said carefully. "They're facts," Patricia replied. "We have dates, amounts, recordings, and testimony from multiple witnesses. Mr. Morrison didn't just manipulate his daughter, he profited from it. Thousands of dollars in tax benefits, all predicated on custody he obtained through fraud." David found his voice. "This is ridiculous. I was protecting Emma from an unstable—" "Stop." Emma's voice was steady but hard.
Just stop, Dad.
"I've heard the recording. I know you planned the lockout. I know you rehearsed calling her unstable. I know about the payments to Hartwell Consulting. Emma, you don't understand the context. I understand that you taught me to fear her, so I'd stay close to you." Emma pulled out a paper from her backpack, printed screenshots. "I have texts here where you told your friends I was under control and that the custody arrangement was financially beneficial. You made me a revenue stream." The color drained from David's face completely. Ms. Palmer was now reading through the binder with increasing alarm, making notes on her legal pad. Patricia leaned forward. "Here's what we want: a written retraction of all claims about Mrs. Morrison's instability, submitted to the court. A formal letter clarifying that she was never a danger to her child and that the separation was achieved through misrepresentation. And repayment of $15,000, roughly half the tax benefits you fraudulently claimed over 4 years." "That's extortion," David said, but his voice was weak. "No," Patricia said calmly. "Extortion would be threatening to release the recording of you coaching Emma to call her mother crazy, or the evidence of your payments to a consulting firm that specializes in manufacturing custody cases. This is simply correcting the public record and recovering ill-gotten gains." Ms. Palmer set down her pen. "Mr. Morrison, I need to speak with you privately." David's hands were shaking now. "You're destroying my reputation. Everything I built." "You did that yourself," Emma said quietly. "I'm just telling the truth about it." They stepped outside for 15 minutes. Through the glass walls, I could see Ms. Palmer talking intensely, David's shoulders slumping, his head shaking, then nodding. When they returned, Ms. Palmer spoke first. "My client is willing to submit a clarifying statement to the court regarding the circumstances of the custody arrangement. However, the financial demand needs negotiation." "No negotiation," Patricia said. "The amount is based on documented tax benefits. We're not asking for emotional damages or punitive measures. Just return what was taken fraudulently." David slumped in his chair.
Fine.
I'll write the retraction. "And the payment?" His jaw clenched. "My lawyer will draw up an agreement."
One more thing, Emma said.
All eyes turned to her. "I'm transferring to the university 2 hours from here. I don't want to be in the same town as you anymore. And I need you to respect that distance.
No surprise visits.
No showing up at my dorm. When I'm ready to talk to you again, if I'm ever ready, I'll reach out. But until then, you leave me alone." David's face crumpled. "Emma, you can't. I'm your father." "You were supposed to be my father," she said, her voice breaking. "But fathers don't use their children as pawns. They don't profit from keeping families apart. They don't lie for years and call it love. Everything I did was for you."
No, Emma interrupted.
"Everything you did was for you. And I'm done pretending otherwise." A separate situation unfolded that same week. David had previously filed a complaint against Dr. Rodriguez, claiming she'd shown bias by supporting me at Emma's graduation. The college had scheduled a review hearing. Patricia suggested we attend. "The recording from Mrs. Chun might be relevant," she said. "It establishes a pattern of manipulative behavior." The review panel consisted of 3 faculty members and a dean. David presented his case that Dr. Rodriguez had inappropriately inserted herself into a family matter, creating a hostile environment for his daughter. Then Dr. Rodriguez calmly presented her counter-evidence: the date she'd first met me, 2 years after the custody case, documentation that she'd only ever interacted with me professionally, and a statement from Professor Yamamoto about David's previous harassment. And, she added, I've been provided with additional context that may be relevant to Mr. Morrison's credibility. She played Mrs. Chen's recording. The panel's faces shifted from neutral to disturbed as they listened to David coaching his daughter, planning the public humiliation of his wife, orchestrating events to make her appear unstable. This recording predates my involvement by 2 years, Dr. Rodriguez said. But it establishes that Mr. Morrison has a documented history of manipulating situations to his advantage and then claiming victimhood when people see through his tactics. The panel dismissed David's complaint within minutes. Emma posted to social media that evening, just one paragraph, carefully worded. Grateful for the truth and for everyone who helped me see it. Sometimes the stories we're told aren't the whole story. Sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who need our trust to control us. No hate here, just healing. And a reminder that it's never too late to question what you've been taught to believe. Blue heart. The comments flooded in within minutes. Classmates saying they'd suspected something was off. Former neighbors apologizing for believing the gossip. Mrs. Chen commenting simply, "Proud of your courage, Emma." And dozens of messages from other young adults sharing their own stories of parental manipulation, of choosing one parent because they'd been told to, of discovering years later that the villain of their story had actually been the hero all along. David's phone number was blocked, but I heard through Jennifer that he'd tried calling her, tried reaching out to old friends, tried to rebuild the narrative one more time.
But the truth was out now.
And truth, once released, can't be put back in the box. The formal affidavit arrived 6 weeks after mediation. David's new attorney had drafted it carefully, admitting to misunderstandings and regrettable miscommunications, without using words like fraud or manipulation. Patricia filed it with the court anyway, along with our own exhibits. "It's not perfect," she told me, "but it's in the public record now. Anyone searching your name will find this correction alongside the original claims." The check for $15,000 came separately. Emma wanted nothing to do with it. "That's yours," she said when I showed her. "He took 4 years from you. Money doesn't fix that, but you should have it anyway." I deposited half and put the other half in an education fund with Emma's name on it. For graduate school, I told her. Or whatever comes next. Emma's transfer to Northridge University went through in August. She'd applied for their environmental science program and received a research grant that covered most of her expenses. "I don't need his money," she told me, packing boxes in what had become her room. "The grant covers tuition, and I have a part-time job lined up at the campus bookstore." The day before she left, David sent a text, not to Emma, but to me. "Can I take her to dinner?"
Please.
Just to say goodbye. I showed Emma the message. She stared at it for a long moment, then shook her head. "I'm not ready. Tell him I need time. Tell him I'll reach out when I'm ready." I relayed the message. David's response was just one word. Understood. Maybe he was learning. Or maybe he was just out of options. The college hosted an awards ceremony in September, a small event honoring staff members who'd gone above and beyond. Dr. Rodriguez had nominated me for a Teaching Excellence Award based on my work with struggling students. I didn't win, but I was asked to present the student keynote introduction. Emma came home for the event, sitting in the 3rd row, right in the center. When I took the microphone, I looked out at the audience and saw so many faces I'd come to know over the past 4 years. Margaret, who taught me to live well instead of living bitter. Dr. Rodriguez, who'd believed in me when I barely believed in myself. Patricia, who'd fought for me twice now. And Emma, who'd found her way back. "Sometimes the kindest thing we do for the people we love," I said, my voice steady, "is stop arguing and start living well. We can't control what others think of us, what stories they tell, what narratives they build. But we can control who we become in response. We can choose growth over bitterness, truth over vindication, presence over absence." I caught Emma's eye and smiled. We can choose to be there, ready and whole, when the people we love finally find their way home. The applause was warm. When I stepped down from the podium, Emma squeezed my hand as I passed. After the ceremony, she handed me a box wrapped in brown paper. "Open it later," she said, "when you're alone." That night, I unwrapped the package. Inside was a leather-bound book with blank pages, except they weren't blank. Emma had filled the first half with carefully transcribed copies of my letters from the someday box, organized chronologically, with notes in the margins. Day 47. This is when I was mad at you for missing my field trip. I didn't know you were locked out of the house. Day 213. You wrote about my debate tournament. I won that day. I wish you'd been there. Day 891. You said you were proud of me no matter what. I needed to hear that today for years later. On the last filled page, Emma had written her own entry. Day 1461. The day I finally came home. Mom, I read every letter. All of them. I grew up reading who you really are, even though you didn't know I'd ever see them. You wrote to me every single day for 4 years. You never gave up. You never stopped loving me. And now I understand what love actually looks like. Not control, not conditions, not manipulation. Just presence. Just consistency. Just hope that never dies. Thank you for waiting. Thank you for being someone worth coming home to. I love you, Emma. I held the book to my chest and cried, not from sadness this time, but from the overwhelming relief of finally being seen. 3 months later, Emma called on a Sunday afternoon. Are you busy next weekend? She asked. Never too busy for you. What's up? There's an environmental science symposium at my school. Students are presenting research projects. Mine got accepted. My heart swelled. Emma, that's amazing. I'll definitely be there. Good. Because. She paused. Because Dad's been texting, asking if he can come. And I think maybe I'm ready to see him. But only if you're there too. I sat down slowly. Are you sure? No, she admitted. But I can't avoid him forever. And I don't want to do it alone. I need someone in my corner who I can trust. I need you. Then I'll be there, I promised. Right in the front row. The symposium was held in a lecture hall with stadium seating. I arrived early and claimed a seat in the front row, center section. When David walked in 20 minutes later, he scanned the room, saw me, and hesitated. For a moment, I thought he might leave. Then he walked down the aisle and sat 3 seats away from me, leaving empty chairs between us like a demilitarized zone. Claire, he said stiffly. David. We sat in awkward silence until Emma took the stage. She looked confident in her presentation clothes, her research displayed on slides behind her. When she spoke, her voice was clear and passionate. She was magnificent. Afterward, we met her outside the lecture hall. David approached first, keeping his distance, his hands shoved in his pockets. You did great, he said. Really great, Em. Thanks. Emma's voice was cautious, guarded. Dad, it's weird, having you both here. I know, David said. He looked at me, then back at Emma. I know I messed up. I know sorry doesn't fix it. But I am. Sorry, it wasn't enough. It would never be enough. But it was something. I need time, Emma said. I'm not ready to go back to how things were if we ever go back at all. But maybe we can try something new. Something honest. I'd like that, David said quietly. Emma turned to me. Can we get lunch? All of us? Just neutral territory. Public place, no drama? I looked at my daughter. This strong, clear-eyed young woman who'd survived manipulation and still had the courage to seek healing instead of revenge. If that's what you want, I said. I'm in. We went to a cafe near campus. The conversation was stilted, careful, full of long pauses and safe topics. But we made it through an hour without anyone storming off or breaking down. As we were leaving, Emma walked out with David to his car while I waited by mine. I watched them talk, her arms crossed defensively, him nodding, both of them trying. When she came back to me, she looked exhausted but relieved.
That was hard, she said.
The hardest things usually are, I agreed. But I did it. I faced him. I told him what I needed. And I survived. You did more than survive, sweetheart. You set boundaries. You took control of your own narrative. You're amazing. She hugged me tight. I couldn't have done it without you. without knowing you were here, that you've always been here. 6 months passed. Then a year. Emma and David built a tentative relationship based on honesty and boundaries. He was learning to be a father instead of a controller. It was slow, often painful work. But Emma and we healed faster. We had coffee every Sunday, video calls twice a week, and an ongoing text thread full of memes and inside jokes. She came home for holidays. I visited her at school. One bright morning in May, we found ourselves walking past the administration building where our public reunion had happened 2 years earlier. Emma was about to graduate from Northridge with her bachelor's degree, and I'd come to campus to help her move into a new apartment for graduate school. "Remember this place?" she asked, gesturing to the building. "How could I forget?" "Someone stopped me last week," Emma said. "A freshman." She said she'd heard the story about the mom who never gave up and the daughter who finally came home. She said it gave her courage to reconnect with her own mom after 3 years of silence. "Did they?" I asked.
"Yeah."
"They're having lunch next week." Emma smiled. Our mess became someone else's hope. How weird is that?
"Not weird," I said.
Just proof that truth always matters, even when it's hard. We reached the entrance to the building. Emma paused. "Back row or front?" she asked, echoing the question I'd once asked myself at her graduation. I smiled, remembering the terrified woman who'd hidden in the back, afraid to be seen. That woman was gone now, replaced by someone stronger, someone who'd earned her place in the light.
"Front," I said.
"Always front." Good answer. Emma linked her arm through mine. "Let's go together." And we walked through the doors side by side, not erasing the past, but moving forward from it. Not pretending the pain hadn't happened, but refusing to let it define us. Together, the way we should have been all along. The way we would be from now on. Here's a question for you. If someone you loved was being manipulated against you, would you have the strength to wait years for them to see the truth? Or would you give up? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Hit that like button, and subscribe for more stories about families, betrayal, and the long road to healing.